Folks, we're going to talk about the Seattle housing market, what is really going on. I've seen in the comments and my Twitter page, yes, you can follow me on Twitter at one rental at a time, that everybody is saying, Michael, you don't get it. Seattle is crashing. It is falling apart. And I keep saying, you know what? I talked to a 1% agent, top 1% agent in the country who happens to call Seattle her backyard. So let's talk to Beth Traverso and just see what is actually happening in Seattle today, not October, because there's a lot of people talking about October. Beth, how you doing? Happy holidays, all that good stuff.
Hi, happy holidays. So good to see you and everybody. I miss everybody. So thank you so much for tuning in and having me back. I appreciate it very much. Good to be here.
Yeah. So Beth, I don't know if you've seen it. A lot of people keep telling me, almost yelling at me with capital letters, that Seattle is crashing, and I don't understand. So I know you're in
Right.
the data. I know you look every day.
Mhm.
I know that you had your peak in June and things came down, but what's been going on the last 8 weeks? Is it still crashing? Are we seeing a bottom? What's actually going on
Right. So
day to
it's
day?
always kind of tricky to call a bottom, but I sense we're kind of there is my experience and sense of it is telling me. Am I right? Time will tell. But it's kind of important, I think, to rewind all the way back to the beginning of the year. And in last January, we had the most insane. I've been in the business for 25 years, just about. And in January, February, we saw the most intense spike of prices I've ever seen in my career. It was like
Unhealthy.
trying to ride a bucking bronco for agents and buyers and everybody just to try to stay on top of this. Prices shot up overnight 30%. And a lot of it was when we started having all these bidding wars where people were paying four or $500,000 over list price on typical homes in good areas. And it was just insanity and not sustainable, and that needed to stop. And that wave continued for several months. It was this intensity of like 3 days on the market, if that. And very little inventory, low interest rates, everybody piling in. It was a feeding frenzy. And so we had that incredible spike, created this like big wave and increased prices year over year that went all the way through until about April is when I started seeing it start to shift this year. So that was, right around just about 3-4 months of intense price increases. And then that's when the interest rate started kicking in a major way, and things started pulling back very dramatically. So we saw a dramatic rise and we saw a dramatic correction too. And so it was really interesting times to help my sellers and buyers navigate that transition and what to do when we're seeing things happening that aren't showing up in the data yet. People need to keep in mind that with housing data, there's a long lag, because it's like a big ship that kind of moves slowly, or things might happen quickly, but it doesn't show up quickly in the data because it takes 30 to 45 days for pending sales to close. And then you got to compile the data and publish the report or whatever. And it takes a long time for all that to happen. And by that time that you see the data, something else is going on. So it's really important, I think, to know people that are right in it with boots on the ground that see what's happening in the day to day, week to week, because that's going to be a lot more impactful. The Case-Shiller index is something, it just came out yesterday and everybody talks about it, but it's so far out of date that it's talking about things that we were talking about on this show several months ago. So, and it, we did see a very big correction from, say, that April, May peak down to June, July. July was where I really felt that pain the most. And then it did continue to kind of bump along over the summer and fall. So what we are seeing as far as the Seattle area, year over year in the MLS, we did a great, screen share video a few videos back if somebody wants to look at that, where we looked at the actual data from the Northwest MLS. And we saw that the November year over year data, Seattle is still positive year over year. I believe it's about 2% positive. So,
Yeah,
and
I'm
no,
curious.
Seattle was 6.5% positive. Sorry, and all of King County was about 1% positive year over year. That's the most recent data.
Yeah, what was it peak to trough? If you have the data in front of you, don't it? So do you remember like peak nuttiness in May to kind of the bottom bumping along? You think it was down 10%?
No, I think it's in the hotter it's going to vary from area to area. I'm trying to find I don't have it right in front of me right here, so I'm just going to go off my memory, which isn't always the
Sure.
best. But I do know, like, for example, in one area right near me called Savannah, which was one of the hottest areas, we peaked around a 1.6 million or so
Okay.
median sale price. And then now we're down to about 135 in that same area, so
18% ish.
yeah. So in some areas that are a little more like, I guess we'd say like tertiary. I look at the rings, and I look at the epicenter being like Bellevue or Seattle, and then you have like these rings outside it. The farther and farther out areas, and some of the more farther out areas, I have seen some drop of 20% or more. In some of the
Okay.
areas that are like in the farthest reach. Some of the
Sure.
areas that saw the biggest run up that also tend to be popular first time home buyers. Those ones I've been seeing go down potentially more peak to trough.
Okay.
It's still flat year over year in those more outlying areas. It's still we're not necessarily at a negative price point yet, year over year for median prices. But because we had that big bubble, if you will, now bubble is one of those like, words that gets people worked up, but we did have, if you look at the chart though, there was this, the line that came up, this spring where we had these crazy year over year prices like that. We're not going to meet that
No,
this
you're going to be
March,
negative
for
next
example. We're
year.
going to be negative, and those headlines are going to make it sound like the bottom fell out and the world is, the real estate world is decimated and crashing and burning. But in reality, what I think we're going to see is more of a bumping along this. I don't think we might see a little bit of a increase in price from month over month, but not year over year. So because typically
Yeah.
what we see is like right now there's very little on the market. There's almost nothing has come on the market in the last several weeks. I mean, it's been Christmas. We don't tend to get a lot of snow, but we did, and there was an freak ice storm,
Oh,
stuff like that. It's just people aren't
yeah.
listing their house right now because they can't,
No.
like I have some that we're working on getting ready, but we got to do a lot of yard cleanup and other like there's things we got to do. So right now what happens is people are getting, so for home sellers, they're past the holidays now, and the people that are planning on selling are just now starting to work on getting their homes ready for sale. And
Mhm.
there's a lag time in that, so it takes about 3-4 weeks for people to start to get their houses ready to list and on the market. In our area, it requires a lot of prep. There's a lot of expectation on how a house can be marketed, so to do it right, it takes some time. However, buyers tend to be ready more quickly than sellers, so we're already
Yeah.
starting to see those buyers coming back, and I'm seeing showings increase. And even with the bad weather, we have people going out in the snow and ice looking at houses and stuff. So people are out there looking. They're
Wow.
not necessarily quick to pull the trigger though. People are being very thoughtful about it, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
So, but I've definitely seen that increase in activity, big drop in listings. This week we've had maybe like 3 or 4 times more pending sales than new listings in the last week.
Mm.
So which
Yeah.
kind of goes to be what to be expected with this season. So it's
Yeah.
a season.
So I took a couple of things. So again, I think it's again, what I'm trying to parrot what I heard from you. One is Seattle, the greater area likely will show negative year on year, which is less about today and more about the nuttiness of what will be 2022, right?
Yes.
2022,
Mhm.
January to April was stupid, 400K average. It distorts the number. Of course, we're going to come off that in 2023. I think that's what I heard. Second, it's all about inventory, and there's still not a lot of inventory on that front. Beth, I do have a question. I think about the Bay Area a lot, and I think Seattle has a lot of this as well. I think there's a white collar recession coming. I think it will be disproportionately tech focused. So you've been doing this is a little bit longer than I have. What happens if Amazon and Microsoft and other Seattle based tech companies lay off 10% or 15% or heaven forbid 25%? Does that impact the market at all? I think it does, but what are
It
your
does, at
thoughts?
least in certain sectors, and for a while it does. But and we have seen some layoffs around here, and I think there probably are still some anxiety. There probably is still some anxiety out there about tech workers losing their jobs and getting laid off. However, that was kind of more the buzz maybe a month or so ago.
Okay.
And a lot of people that did lose their jobs, I know a lot of them. Some people got laid off, but we saw was that a lot of these other tech, maybe smaller tech companies, not the Amazons, but other ones that were just starving for great talent or swooping in with great job offers, you know?
That's what I actually see that in the Bay Area as well, right? There's a lot of talk about
Yeah, I
Meta
haven't
laying
seen
off
anybody be
10%.
unemployed for long. They're happier now. Like, well, they got a pay raise, they got better benefits, they got all these things, you know, because these other companies are like, yes, finally we get a chance to get the people that we've been losing to these
Yeah.
behemoths. So I think that it does more for the it did definitely impacted the psychology, and people, if they don't feel secure about their jobs, generally
They
aren't
pull
going to
back.
want to make
Yeah.
a decision to purchase a house if they're not sure what their employment situation is going to be like. But once that settles down and everything seems to be okay, then they may come back in. So I am not a tech worker, so I'm just speculating and just speaking about what I see out there, you know, but what I've seen, I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be as catastrophic as maybe some people think it might be.
I think there's a good chance that Q1, kind of to your point, I think Q1, which starts in 5 days, if we can believe it, or 4 days, I think there's going to be more apprehension. I think there's going to be, some layoffs. But to your point, I think exactly what you said happens. There's this, I'll call it second tier of companies who need and are hungry for tech workers, who haven't been able to compete in the arms race that was Amazon and Meta and Google and Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Now that those people lose, they just trickle down. So I think it's going to be amazing. I do think that Q1 is soft in the Bay Area because I think there's going to be a lot of movement, perhaps. But I think this rolling recession, I think it hits tech in Q1, and by late Q2, it's like, okay, we've got who we got. We're a little more streamlined. We're a little bit more fit. We're just going to rock and roll and go forward. That's what, again, I'm completely guessing here in December, but that's what I see happening next year.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I wouldn't be surprised, the Seattle area mirrors the Bay Area quite a bit.
Okay.
It always has, so I expect that what happens there is going to be real similar to what happens here.
Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You and I are going to be talking every week. We talk about Seattle, King County. Beth, where can somebody find you if they wanted to buy, sell, or just network with an amazing person?
If somebody wants to reach out to me, I'm easy to find. You can go to my website, BethTraversogroup.com. If you want to kind of spell my name, it's right there in the corner, so you can check that out. And I'm always happy to chat with people on Facebook or other social media. I'm pretty easy to find out there. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you.